Double needles and even triple needles are fun to work with on your machine, whether you use them for a utility type setting for a hem, like on a t-shirt, where you see that cover stitch where you can simulate that. You can also do some fun decorative stitching with a twin needle, double needle, whatever you want to call it, plus even wing needles, which some of your stitches in your machine are set up for that. So first off, it does depend on the size that you pick. So I'm going to go ahead and use a 2.5 double needle. Just picking one, you can actually use on this machine up to an 8.0 double needle. That is gigantic. But for some of the decorative work I want to show you, this is a nice smaller size to give us a great bang for our buck. So I'm going to just go ahead and we'll put it in the machine first. You'll notice it just has a single top, so it goes in just like a regular needle. Plus, before we do anything or threading the machine, we want to go ahead and tell the machine that we're putting this on. Have you noticed that some of your decorative stitches come up, well actually most of them, come up at 9 millimeters wide. So with this 2.0 or 2.5 double needle, it's going to go off the edge of the foot and break. We don't want to have that happen. So we're going to go into our machine, touch where it says 9 millimeters, and pick the double needle that matches the size that you're using. So this is the 2.5, and what you're going to notice is that the stitch you pick is going to be doubled. So for example, if I pick a zigzag, all of a sudden it starts to show you what it's going to look like with that needle in place. Actually, a lot of the utility stitches I actually like to play with. You can make them a little longer, see what the stitch looks like. And some of them just go crazy and look fantastic. It's like having all new decorative stitches. Now let's look at this stitch. First with just as a regular single needle stitch. Now, if I was to go and put a 4.0 double needle on, you're going to notice that it starts to spread the stitch out. It almost makes the two stitches run parallel to each other. So just depending on the size of double needle you put on, you're going to get different looks for every stitch. So let's return this back to size we'll be using. And now let's go ahead and work with how to thread the machine. So I'm going to clip the thread up top, pull the thread out the lower part, and that way I don't back up any extra thread into my machine unnecessarily. Now, if you don't have two spools, you could always wind one thread onto a bobbin and then put your bobbin here. If you're going to work with triple needles, you could use a separate thread stand. You could put two bobbins wound with new colors, kind of stacked right here. So it just depends on what you're working with or how many spools of thread you have. So go ahead and take them both in your hand at once, like this. Pull them across and go through the first guide together. Then when you come right here, if you look inside, there's actually a little fin down here, and that means that you can take the two threads, separate them, and put one on one side and one on the other. That's your tension. So that means that each thread will have its own tension equally as it squeezes together. Once those are in there, if you want to give it a little kind of pull and floss it in, make sure it's there. I'm going to hold on to these back threads at the top and continue threading the rest of the machine with both threads in my hand. Now when you get down to the needles, you are on your own for threading them, but it does not matter which one goes in which needle. So I'm going to just go ahead and separate these. If you have trouble threading the needle, one of those handheld needle threaders, that ones that kind of look like they plunge into the needle, I like those. And that definitely helps get things going. And to help out, I'm going to lower that presser foot. That puts a little bit of pressure on the thread and give it a little push them through. Now once we get started, it's nice to kind of take a few stitches just with like even a straight stitch to practice with, make sure all the threading is exactly where it needs to be before you kind of ease your way into the decorative stitches. I tend to start slow, and by the time I kind of get confident in all my stitches, I really can go ahead and have some fun with that. All right, should we just go ahead? We're going to start back on a straight stitch. So speaking of which, I'm going to just go ahead and do a couple test stitches here. And we have the turquoise and green thread running through. So your machine sounds normal, then everything was threaded correctly. Let me just show you what it looks like on the back side so you know what to expect. you're going to notice that you'll have a little zigzag. That's your bobbin catching both of the needles as the stitch is being made. So now let's go ahead and try some of these stitches. Oh, the honeycomb stitch, this is one of my favorites. And just go ahead. Now it will go up to, now watch the stitch width. We'll take it from 6, oh that's length, sorry, 6, and then it'll turn red. So that means it's outside the zone that works. But if I turn this back to less than, there we go, just about 6.0. That makes it so I don't go outside, but I get a nice bold look with this stitch. So if you have taken the time to stitch out your decorative stitches, you might just put a double needle back in and stitch, maybe just an inch or two of a lot of the stitches. If you start to spread them out, they'll look a little bit different. Here, I'll show you what we're getting. You notice that the thread cutter does work, so you can use that just like you're used to. But look at the results you get when you use a double needle. So there are infinite possibilities. If you put a little metallic thread in one needle and a color in another, you'd have a little sparkle. If you had 2 variegated threads, if you had 1 variegated thread and 1 solid, you can see it is unlimited to how much more fun you can have with decorative stitches. And if you're doing anything with your stitch regulator, you can free motion quilt with a double needle also. So have some fun, try them out, just practice the threading. The key is actually in the groove right here when you separate those 2 threads into each of the tension discs. Another nice thing about the double needle function is that notice that it's yellow. So if I go ahead and turn the machine off and then turn it back on, when it comes back on, it's going to have that same setting. This is a setting that will not clear out when you turn the machine off because they don't want you to leave a double needle in, start sewing tomorrow, and then have it break because the setting was cleared out just by turning the machine off. So once this comes back on, we'll show you. It is still set up for the double needle. We still see the 2 rows of stitching right there on the screen.